I'm super excited to share this event and shout out to All Good Oat Milk, 257, Sarah, Hype Entertainment, Paper People Pixels. I think she's actually in England at the moment visiting family, so very exciting for her. Colourcraft, they provide the name tags. Libertine Blends, Coffee Supreme and Tipitty's Water, Fix and Fog Peanut Butter, Wellington Sourdough and Six Barrow Soda & Co. And shout out to the incredible team. Thank you so much for being amazing. Yeah, you guys make it happen. And thanks to our global partners at MailChimp. I don't know if you saw in the newsletter, but they've got a feature this year called Second Act. So do check it out, interesting stories about interesting people. Yeah, and feel free to bring a friend. We do this usually every last Friday of the month, so there'll be 2 events this month. Those are our socials. And the theme of this talk is acceptance. And so this was chosen by, this was illustrated by Robert Beatty, and he's in Lexington, Kentucky. He's an artist and a musician, and his work makes use of outmoded technology and digital emulation of archaic analog techniques to yield organic and otherworldly results. It's kind of surreal. And he's best known as a prolific album cover artist, and so his work's been seen in the New York Times, New York Magazine, Surfer Magazine, The New Republic, and on album covers for artists such as Tame Impala and Kesha, and The Flaming Lips and The Weeknd. So yeah, and we are very lucky to be joined by Tom Brotherstone. So Tom is, as a lot of you might know, the co-owner of Awhi Yoga and Wellness. And where are you guys based again?
We are on Johnson Street.
On Johnson Street.
Above the Leuven Bar.
Delicious. Love that place. So close, so central. Everyone welcome Tom.
So, mai hari mai, ko Tom toka ingoa, atamari.
Oh, did you
So yeah, I'm Tom. Nice to meet you all. So yeah, as Tammy said, I'm the co-owner of Awhi Yoga and Wellbeing. And yeah, we purchased the studio about a year and a half ago. But kind of not by accident. I'd been, my kind of brief story, or try and make it as brief as I possibly can. I started doing yoga probably about 11 years ago. As a university, I was going through depression and, you know, kind of getting to this thing of acceptance nice and early that, you know, I was struggling to come to terms with kind of where I was at. And yoga is one of these kind of tools in, you know, accepting the realities of where I was at in my life. And I ended up going out to India. So I did my first teacher training in India 10 years ago. I then came out to New Zealand the first time by myself. I'd actually been back and forward between New Zealand and Scotland most of my life. Then went back out, spent another 4 months in India, kind of advancing, doing more teacher trainings, and did an internship out there. And then skipping ahead a little bit, I moved out to, after completing my degree in Scotland, I got a degree in landscape architecture. I decided that I was going to put most of my time into martial arts, which I've been doing most of my life. So I also teach martial arts still in town, and teaching yoga. So probably about 5 years ago, kind of made the switch to teaching yoga full time. And yeah, then I found myself kind of in a situation where I'd, just telling Andy there, I'd kind of start to save up a bit of money. The studio closed. We were given about 20 minutes notice. And 2 weeks later, we owned it. So I had this, pretty out there scenario of losing my job, not having anything to do just before Christmas time, thinking, oh shit, am I going to go back to being a gardener or something? And then, 2 weeks later, owning a business, and then just being kind of thoroughly thrust into that. Kind of what I want to talk about a bit in terms of acceptance is through my yoga practice, the studies I've had with yoga, I've kind of constantly tried to, just upskill myself, but also just kind of get a better understanding of where a lot of the teachings of yoga come from. And last year I did a 100-hour study on the Bhagavad Gita. And I think like part of the impetus for me getting into that is that, you hear a lot of kind of more, themes, concepts that come up a lot in sort of just like modern yoga texts, like any kind of books you would pick up around wellness and well-being and all that kind of stuff. And for me, it was really about like, well, where does this stuff originate? Where does it come from? And yeah, subsequently since then, like last year I did a Wananga series with Murray Hemi, which was kind of showing the crossovers between Te Ao Māori and yogic philosophy as well. So it's just kind of this understanding that's kind of shared through a lot of indigenous cultures around like, search for meaning, that kind of thing. So yeah, for me, as soon as I think about this word acceptance, I think about the Bhagavad Gita, especially. And what I want to try and get across today is just like why I'm so fascinated in it is because it's information that's timeless, and it's stuff that really applies to our day-to-day lives. And I've found a lot of kind of strength, a lot of understanding when I've needed it from the Gita. So for those of you who don't know, the Bhagavad Gita is part of the Mahabharata. So one of the great epics. It's a poem that's 84,000 verses, of which the Bhagavad Gita makes up a very, very small part of that. It is the discourse between Arjuna, who is a warrior, who's leading an army, the Pandavas, and his charioteer is the avatar, Lord Krishna. And again, there's many different interpretations, and that's one thing, as I've studied it more and more, is I've kind of read many different variations of the story, and it's kind of told through the lenses of many different traditions. But again, what I'm more kind of interested in is the universal truths that are kind of buried in there, that are kind of these through lines between all translations, all traditions. So yeah, the Gita, it kind of sets a scene where Arjuna is about to fight in this battle, and he's fighting against his family. So there's two kind of warring factions within this family, the Pandavas and the Kauravas. And they roll up on their chariot, and you can kind of set the scene of there's two massive armies, and Arjuna is leading this army, is kind of just, assessing the battlefield. He's rolling down the middle in between the two armies on his chariot with Krishna. And he stops the chariot, and where he stops the chariot, he's opposite some of his family members who he's fighting against on the opposite side. So he sees like his granddad and some of his old teachers and all these people he's about to fight. And in that moment, he has like an emotional breakdown. He is completely torn with what to do. The way it's written, you could even just say that he has like a panic attack. It kind of describes him as kind of sweating, his hair standing up on end, collapsing to the ground, his legs can no longer carry him. So what it is it's kind of just analogous to the times in our lives where we are paralyzed by decisions that we have to make in life. And, I'm sure this is something that we can all relate to, is being paralyzed by whatever that is kind of preventing you from moving forward. What the story really details is this discord between Krishna and Arjuna, and Krishna just trying to will him on and giving him the reason to pick himself up off the ground and to fight. And I suppose one of the reasons why I really enjoy it is because it's kind of this juxtaposition between what we kind of consider yoga to be, that is this kind of quite passive, image of someone meditating in a cave, and yet this is the story of yoga, and yoga being the reason for someone to get up and actually, physically fight someone and kill people. It's like, whoa, like how did this come about? Part of that story is about, Krishna basically saying to Arjuna, listen, there are some realities, and this is kind of these universal truths, these universal realities, that you need to accept. Like you're paralyzed by decision, and part of the reason is because you're not willing to accept the realities of the situation that you find yourself in. And when I read through like these kind of scriptures, what's interesting about yoga, to me anyway, is it's not just like a kind of dogmatic belief system. Quite often it's referred to as like the yogic sciences. And I think part of that is because what's inviting in is like to accept, not just like blindly accept, but to just like apply it to your own life. I see these spiritual texts as being like a mirror. You hold them up and they have different relevance to you at different points in your life. Yeah, particularly with the Gita, there's this kind of idea of there being, and what's interesting is this is also in Te Ao Māori, is this idea of there being 3 different types of knowledge. And to me, it's almost like the 3 different kind of stages of acceptance as well. So in the yogic tradition in Sanskrit, it's known as Shravana, Manana, and Nididhyasana. So Shravana is like what you guys are doing now. It's like you're open to hearing new information. You're kind of opening up your senses, you're taking in the story, you're willing to take your mind somewhere with me to kind of go on this little journey and maybe hear things for the first time. It might be stuff that you're kind of already familiar with. Manana would be the ability to then describe that articulately to someone else. So it's a different level of understanding. And then Nididhyasana would be like having a felt experience over that. So embodying the information enough over time to then be able to like reiterate it to someone else. To have that felt experience of it. And to my understanding in Te Ao Māori, that's the same as this idea of like maramatanga. It's like the kind of highest form of knowledge that we can get to. And to me, that's like the acceptance comes in stages. Like you can be told something, you can explain it to someone else, but over time, it has to really land through you taking it away, applying it in your own life, coming back and forward. So going through just some of the themes and just what are some of these kind of universal truths, universal realities that Krishna is asking Arjuna to accept. And again, I think in that is what we find to be like kind of useful and stuff that's really applicable to day-to-day life. And especially for me, now being a business owner, it's like, I find a lot of this stuff to be very, very valuable. The Bhagavad Gita, it's talking about a war that happened, whether it's historically or accurate or not, it's not important. It's what they call a Dharma Yuddha, so it's like a dharmic war. Dharma is, a nice definition would be acting in accordance with your own inner divinity. So, this idea of trying to do good, battle of good and evil that we're kind of drawn in these two directions all the time. And the main themes within the book, the kind of main 3 different types of yoga that he talks about, Krishna talks about, is karma yoga, yoga of action, bhakti yoga, which is the yoga of devotion, and jnana yoga, which is the yoga of knowledge. So if I was to break those down into a nice little analogy that we can maybe kind of get some deeper understanding on, to me, dharma, another translation for dharma is like your path in life, your purpose. And to me, the dharma is like the road that you are driving on. It's the path that you're taking in life. It's unique to you, it's your path. There's a nice little caption in the Bhagavad Gita that says it's better to follow your own dharma poorly than to follow someone else's dharma well. You know, so it's kind of like this is your path that you should take in life. Your karma is a bit like the car that you drive. Okay, so through your actions in life, you have kind of created the environment that you live in, basically. You know, your karma is responsible for where you are in life, you know, the quality of what's around you, what you're doing. Bhakti is devotion. And this little analogy, I would call that like the steering wheel. It's the thing that gives you direction. And again, I can kind of unpack that a little bit more as we go. And jnana is the yoga of knowledge. So that's a bit like your GPS system. That's the thing that kind of tells you where you are, how this reality is arranged in the yogic lens. So taking it back to this karma yoga, a lovely expression in India is your life is your karma. So again, this is this kind of idea of acceptance that, you know, your life, again, karma is action. Your karma is the action that you've taken. It's the action that you've had in your, again, through the yogic lens, in your past lives. You know, that's kind of determined the body that you have arrived in this life. But it's a really empowering statement to me anyway, because it's saying your life is your making. Your life is what you make of it. You know, it doesn't matter what anyone else has done to you in your life. Your life is your karma. It's like, it's very like from here onwards, it's up to you, okay? It's your karma, it's your action. You know, your actions, whether you like it or not, in this worldview, have got you to where you're at now. And it's your actions that will get you to where you want to go, okay? So it's very like, you know, you're not blaming anyone else for where you're at. You gotta accept your life is your karma. You know, and if horrendous things have happened to you, there's like a level of accountability. Is it your fault? Probably not. Is it very helpful, in my experience now, to take that view of this was something that I have got myself into and I can get myself out of? Yes, I find that to be very, very helpful viewpoint to take on. So what is karma? Well, like, nice analogy would be like, what's the word in Hindi? Khushbu. Means like your fragrance, the fragrance that you give off. You know, if you do good actions in life, you give off a good fragrance, you give off a good vibe. If you don't, then you give off quite a bad vibe, you know? And it's just like, again, it's talking about the reality of the world that we live in. If you are doing negative things, you're fucking people over. You're being a shitty person. That will, you know, it'll be evident in the life that you're living. Okay, it's like karma is not some it can be mysticized, but it's very real as well. You know, it's just saying what we all know. Okay, it's breaking down the reality that we all live in. It's not like, you know, and it's just accepting that truth. You know, if you do good actions, if you really apply yourself, then that will be evident in the life that you're living, and people will be attracted to that as well. also in the Gita, it talks about the kind of attitude of the karma yogi. Like, this is the attitude that we should accept, that we should try and embody. And to that it says that, you should stay steadfast in your duty, without attachment to success or failure. And in this kind of state of equanimity, we find that attitude of karma yoga. So we break that down a little bit. Staying steadfast in your duty, what does that mean? That means you're on this dharmic road, you're on your path, you're driving your car. You got to keep on going down the right path, okay? Without attachment to success or failure. For me, this is where I start to see how it becomes very applicable to me, and especially in kind of business, and how we've decided to set up our business at Awhi. I was just actually talking to someone just like briefly before about how, when you start a business, you want to do everything yourself to start with. You take on way too much. And then eventually you need to be able to delegate. You have to put it onto other people. If you're very much attached to things being a certain way, to me, another way of describing that would be micromanaging, okay? You're very, very attached to things, tasks being performed in a very specific way, okay? And if someone else does it differently, like, okay, can't deal. So the not being attached to success or failure, not being attached to the outcome, okay? I don't like this interpretation of non-attachment, that it's something that's like, makes you very aloof, like I'm not attached, I'm not involved. It's different to that. Not attached to success or failure is kind of more along the lines of what non-attachment is kind of representing. It's not being attached to an idea that you're trying to achieve, but rather you're going in a certain direction. You're allowing for yourself to be taken in the direction of what you feel is right. You're allowing people to go off their own intuition. You're trying to get everyone on that same kind of vibe of we're all trying to take this thing in a positive direction. And how we end up there, we're not necessarily so bothered about. We're not going to be so nitpicky about. I'm not going to try and control, but in not being attached to success or failure, you're kind of like, well, I've got a sense of where I want this thing to go, but ultimately it's going to take on its own life. And I'm not going to try and prevent that because I've got this really strong vision of how things are meant to be. And when you start bringing other people into a kind of company or something else that you're doing, being able to give people that anonymity to be able to kind of, is anonymity the right word? I don't know. Maybe? Anonymity is like not being seen, eh? Autonomy, that's the word I'm looking for, thank you. Cheers, Lucy. Got my back. Yeah, kind of that kind of sense of autonomy, like you can go off and do what you like. So, I'm just kind of going through, to me, when I think about these concepts, like how does it relate to me in everyday life, And again, I'm giving a very brief kind of overview of what is a very complex text. So I don't want to get you the idea that also I'm just like kind of simplifying this down into something that it's not as well. It's not necessarily certainly not specifically about acceptance. So the other part of this is, so we've kind of covered a bit of karma yoga. What is this bhakti? Bhakti is yoga of devotion. There's a one line in the Gita, which I think, again, is another beautiful tie-in to this acceptance. And I love the use of words in this as well. So, you have authority over your actions. You do not have authority over the results of your actions. So you have authority over your actions. You do not have authority over the results of your actions. Okay. If I could summarize what bhakti is to me, it's like this acceptance that there are forces way bigger than yourself at play. Okay. Bhakti is often seen as the kind of more religious aspect of the yoga practice. But to me what it is it's kind of that. It's that acceptance that there's stuff that's way bigger than you that is at play. And again, to me, it's the thing that gives it direction. It's the steering wheel, because to me, what devotion is it's like the highest level of service that you can provide. Like if you think about yourself, what is something that you are devoted to? You know, it might be a family member. If you have kids, it might be a child. You know, it's like the highest form of service. Like I'm willing to do whatever it takes to see this thing be successful. When we're talking about, well, what is this inner divinity? What is it we're trying to, what is this, maybe this idea that we're trying to get across, and how is this maybe kind of palatable to each of us here, some of us with maybe kind of different religious views, maybe atheistic, whatever. To me, it's like the doing what is best. You know, devotion is like almost the kind of, how do you hear this word of like selfless service? And to me, it's like, how can you be of service, the highest form of service, not just to yourself, but to everyone around you, you know? And to me, when you think about the idea of dharma, your path in life, you know, it's like, what is the thing that you're gonna contribute to everyone, you know? What is your contribution in life gonna be? And how can you be as best of service with that as you possibly can? And to me, you know, that's very, you know, we take it back again to where we are today. When you're starting a business or you've got an idea, you know, this is a good place to start, is how can we be best of service to people, you know? How can you ultimately, you know, try and be not self-serving? Because again, you know, your karma, this essence, this sense that you give off to people, if you're being very, very self-serving, if you're being very, very greedy, then, you know, people will get a sense of that. If you are, if you're giving in nature, if you're, you know, trying to do your best to, I love the expression of like, upgrade the world. You're trying to make things better. You're trying to make things better for everyone else around you. Then, you know, people are going to get a sense of that. And in many ways, you know, with karma, it's like, these are the universal truths. You can't fake the funk, you know, you can't, you know, this isn't something that you can just kind of say that you're doing, or, you know, some kind of, you know, tick box of, you know, being of service, but it's something that we have to really embody and understand that it's just a better way of being. You know, I love this idea that if you're looking to be of service to other people, then you're not looking for someone to be in service to you, which does not mean doing everything for yourself. You know, how really can you be of best of service if you're in a, you know, a team scenario and you're that team leader? Well, the best way you can be of service is being a bloody good leader and delegating appropriately and doing all that. You know, so it's not kind of taking it all on for yourself. Yeah.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, of course you can.
When the studio you were in or whatever collapsed and you're out of a job,
Mm-hmm.
were you using your understanding of these yoga ideas to buy the studio and set up yourselves?
100%, 100%. You know, I think an important point to that I should try and illustrate is that as a yoga instructor, you know, and I would definitely consider myself a yogi. And the reason why I would say that is because every single week I take a different theme, a different aspect of philosophy, something that I'm reading, and I try and apply it to what's happening in my life and share that with everyone else. So as a result, you know, I very much see, you know, in my eyes, I see the world through the lens of yoga, you know, and that's something that's just been like an ongoing practice. It's like hard for me not to, you know, think about it, every single week. That is my little system. That's my thing. Is trying to embody these lessons, and again, to be a good instructor of yoga or of anything, you've got to be living the values that you're trying to espouse to people. You can't just, again, fake the funk. You can't just read it because it's going to come off as being inauthentic. So yeah, I very much, again, relate to this story of Arjuna being thrust into this situation of having to fight, because even in the Bhagavad Gita, he says, kind of when he's having his emotional breakdown, I would rather live a life of arms. Well, what does that mean? He's saying, well, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I would just want to be a monk. I just want to go meditate in a cave. And what Krishna's saying to him is like, tough shit, man. Like, this is the situation you have found yourself in. Your karma has got yourself to this situation. And what is the best thing you could do? So for me, yeah, buying the studio is like that is my little version of that. That is the being thrust into a situation, and yes, there are many forces at play there internally that are saying, this could go terribly wrong. I'm going to be stuck in Wellington now. I won't be able to travel. There's like the internal struggles of all that going on. But ultimately, there's this massive community that we have developed. There is not just the community at Awhi that we have, but there's also, yoga studios all around Wellington. And at that point, there was 6 that had already closed down, and we were about to be the 7th. And I, dedicated my life to this community of yoga, and that was my time to, really show that, I'm willing to put all my chips on the table and, put everything I have into trying to keep my little part of that community alive. So, yeah, to answer your question, very much so. Like, everything I do, I try and, I think a big word for me at the moment is integrity. And I think there's so much, especially within the yoga community, there's so much bullshit. There's so much just nonsense, and that's part of my wanting to go back and understand the Gita and understand some of these traditional texts, is that there's a lot of different interpretations, there's a lot of kind of new interpretations of old information, and as a Scot, being from Scotland, it's very much in our culture to try and cut through the bullshit and really get to what is real. And I think that's why yoga has always really spoken to me, is that it is about connecting to what is real, universal truths. And, I'm actually naturally quite a skeptical person, and so far, yoga's never kind of let me down in that way. The reason why I keep on coming back to it is because of how it hits home and how it really relates to the world that I see around me.
Fantastic.
Probably a good place to finish.
Yeah, that was amazing in that you've just like cut through the woo-woo-ness.
Yeah.
Because I love yoga, but often it's interpreted as being quite woo-woo. But
Yeah.
with the story of the Bhagavad Gita, it's actually really hardcore.
Yeah.
So thank you, Tom.
Nice. Cheers, guys. Thank you.
If anyone has any questions for Tom, will you be sticking around?
Yeah, totally.
Yes, Laura, please.
I have a question. I really love what you said about basically in life you have to, like, you have control over certain things, and then you have to accept that you don't have control over everything. How did that for you, as well as everything else, like mindfulness and the mind-body connection, how did this change your practice of yoga?
Got you. So it's like, where are you placing your energy? Familiar with Taoism? The idea of the Tao, there being like the way. There's a beautiful explanation in Taoism of like the Tao being like a river. Okay, the river of life, you're flowing in the river. And if you're going against, again, the forces that are bigger than yourself, if you're, why is this happening to me, da 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 da, it's like you're in the river of life, but you're swimming against the current. Okay, the current is taking you in a certain direction, and you are, and to me, the yoga, you know, being proactive, your life is your karma. How can I, you know, act in this scenario is you know, getting your head up out of the water, seeing that life is taking you in a certain direction and thinking there's momentum, I'm getting taken in this direction, but what am I going to do with that momentum? Where am I going to go? You know? Does that answer your question? You know what I mean? So like it's to me, that's how it's like, you know, stuff is going to happen out of your control all the time. You know, you think about, you know, families up in Hawke's Bay of like, you know, you've done everything you can to build up a life for yourself, and you've got a farm, and you've got this, and you've got that, and all the rest of it. You know, and you could have played your cards perfectly, and then all of a sudden, river bursts its banks, you know, and all that's wiped away. And it's like, I think that's why the Gita is so important, because, yeah, I mean, some situations, like you can say, oh, you know, I got a bit, you know, acceptance and da-da-da. It's like, yeah, but some situations in life are really, really extreme. And how are you going to deal with those? Because we all go through them. We all go through really, really extreme events that happen in our lives. And what is going to be the thing that's going to guide you, you know, that internal compass to take you in the right direction? And the thing that's going to allow you to get the best possible outcome for yourself. And that is not, you know, banging your head against the wall and complaining about all these forces that are out with your control, you know.
Go with the flow, roll with the punches.
Yeah,
I
great.
like that. And will you be sticking around afterwards?
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, if you want to have a chat with Tom, please feel free. And yeah, thank you for coming, everyone. Enjoy your Friday.
Awesome. Cheers, guys.